Hello, everyone. Welcome to Breaking Free podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Francis. Today, very grateful to be joined by Jordan Davey. Jordan Davey, welcome to the platform, mate. You're a root cause health coach, I would assume, but I'll let you sort of delve into what that looks like. But welcome to the platform today, mate. It's been about, I reckon, 6 months in the making trying to get you on this platform today. So welcome to the show, and very happy to have you here and another young person doing some awesome things out there, spreading the message of truth and health and wellness far and wide. So welcome to the platform, bro. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, brother. Looking forward to the convo.
So root cause health, what like for someone that's just listening to this, mate, it's probably young and sort of like what is root cause health? What do you do and what does that sort of look like? Just a brief summary
Yeah.
there. Yep.
So I guess the opposite is what we have in the Western world. In Australia, we have a conventional based system, which is all about the symptom approach rather than getting to the actual root cause, which is where it comes from of what's actually going on. And a lot of that comes down to, I'm sure you've had Mel on the podcast, so the listeners be familiar with the fact that, yeah, we don't understand the complexity of us as a human. We just see an issue and then we think, yep, that's where it's coming from. Let's fix that and that's it. And we'll mask over it. And the best way I like to think about it is it's the same as if your car's fucked and you've got the flashing engine light on and you just tape that up and you just keep driving. You're like, nah, she's good to go until it breaks down. Call RACV. You're in hospital, you're getting surgery, you're getting put on meds, and then it's quite severe. So the root cause approach is actually thinking, okay, we have our physical body, but we also have our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual body as well. And all of these things intertwine. Now, I'd say there's different perspectives on the root cause. I don't really think people that say they're in the root cause space really understand that because they're still doing what the conventional system's doing, but in more of a natural sense, where it's very
Mm,
functional medicine orientated, which is where my training came from. But at the same time, then there's this deeper layer of us as an energetic being and our mindset and how our spirit comes into play. And then the environmental factors as well, which get really neglected. So all of this stuff is interacting to create our current state of health. And as we've gotten more and more developed with technology, we've created more and more of these man-made issues with vaccines and EMF and pollution and toxins, etc. So that's created even more complexity around what's going on. And it's led us to, in the conventional system, create more medications, which we
mm.
use, which then create more side effects. And then we get on medications based on those side effects, and it just continues to spread. And you can talk about the sinister aspects of it, that it's designed this way to keep people sick and to keep them low vibration, which some people will be a little bit more, I guess, timid to believe. But regardless, in the model that we live in the capitalistic society that we live in as well, everything's profit driven. And if you just look
Yeah.
at it from that perspective, a sick patient is a good client or a good customer because they're going to keep coming back. A healed patient is not a good customer. They're not going to come back. And my philosophy on health is how you can actually become a healed patient, but also become your own healer and your own doctor. And you need to have the knowledge to do that initially.
Mm.
And then you'll go and you'll see specialists in different areas to get little tune ups and tweak ups. But ultimately, if you can get that like 80% of your own health sorted, which we all have capacity to do and empower yourself that way, that's how you actually allow these things to sustain long term. And you're not just relying on outsourcing it.
Yeah, love that, mate. What got you into this work? I was reading a bit about your story last night, but what got you into this? Like, I'm sure you have a pretty awesome story yourself. Like, if you're doing something like this, there's always a story behind it. So, what's a bit about your story and what got you into the root cause health and what made you so passionate about helping others take back control of their health, which is really important given what's been going on here for the last however long. So, you want to delve into a
Yeah.
bit of that too?
Yeah, so I guess it all started. So I had a lot of experience with mental health issues with friends when I was younger. And I naturally was just someone that could empathize with those people and give them advice, and people would come to me advice for that. I had one friend in particular in year 12 who was really mentally ill, and she attempted suicide, and then that kind of sent me down that pathway even further. And yeah, that's when I officially studied like psychology, and then I was working at a mental health foundation, and then I studied neuroscience, and then I went into biomed thinking I wanted to be a doctor. And that was like my uni training, like my standardized training. But even going back before that, like growing up, I was always super into like the conspiracy theory side of things, which we know now is just
Yeah.
like fortune telling. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I was working at a warehouse and I was listening to Joe Rogan for ages. And the funny thing is like, this is what you'd do. You'd be with the boys, you'd all 15, 16 when you'd start smoking weed, you'd be at one boy's house and someone would listen to something and then you'd start telling stories about that. And there was actually that like deeper connecting sense. But again, it took a substance to be able to get you into that zone. But we would have these chats and we talk about Joe Rogan episodes. And we actually heard this one with Dorian Yates, who spoke
Oh,
about have you heard him speak about his DMT
yeah,
experiences?
yeah.
Yeah. And we were hearing that and we were all just like blown away. So then looked into that, learned about Paul Stamets at that time as well, who was like really deep into psychedelic pharmacology and talking about mushrooms and the effect that they have. And then that kind of put me further down that rabbit hole to learn more about like LSD and to learn about, psychedelics, which was originally what I wanted to do. When I was going to finish school, I wanted to go to John Hopkins, finish my psych degree, and then study psychopharmacology and do that because I was
Yeah.
really, really interested in it. But yeah, at that time as well, listening to Joe Rogan, just like being in the routine of it, you started seeing different characters. I saw Kyle Kingsbury come through. I found the On It podcast through him. And then that's where I found Paul. And Paul was like the catalyst for really understanding the health side of
Yeah.
things. So I listened to his episode. It was called the fucking legendary Paul Check, which is just like the perfect way to explain him. And then that put me on a completely different path in terms of what I knew. Like I knew obviously playing footy, about training, about fucking eating Musashi protein bars. I had 45 grams of protein in them to try and put size on and smashing it. And yeah, going down that, I guess, very fitness centric path. But then, yeah, learning about Paul and learning about eating organic food, that was my gateway into the more holistic side of things. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I heard about that, I said to Dad, "Can you take me down here?" I went to the shops, got some organic eggs, got like organic rocket avocado, came home and I was like I went to sleep that night. I was so excited to make breakfast next thing in the morning. But again, it didn't really register because I was still going out on the weekends, getting fucked, drinking,
Mm,
drugs, partying, eating shit. But yeah, starting to step into that a little bit more. And then that kind of coincided with my health issues, which a lot of them stemmed from. So I had a very high dose of Accutane for about 12 to 18 months when I was young, when I was about 14, 15. And that really was a catalyst to create a lot of gut health issues later down the line. And then from there, that's where I discovered that the conventional system didn't have any answers for me. I had this crazy Goldberg sensation, which is when you have this feeling of something stuck in your throat, which a
mm,
lot of that was anxiety driven, but I also had H. pylori. And then I had, just my blood markers were all over the place from a functional perspective, but they didn't understand any of that because they were just looking at it from the conventional system. So, yeah, I couldn't get answers that way. I was seeing specialists, I was seeing ENTs, developed a lot of health anxiety from that as well. A lot of it, I believe, is inherited trauma from my dad's side of the family because my grandpa died of a heart attack when he was 30 years old out of
mm,
nowhere, which was never really processed. And yeah, that led to a lot of those fears that came up. And a lot of that was also just, as I said, from cooking my brain chemistry and not sleeping and being around blue light, playing PlayStation all night. And yeah, it just kind of all came together where I really needed help. So after not getting answers that way, I found one of my mates who I played footy with, who became a health coach, and he looked at my bloods and he was heavy into the gut side of things. And he's like, "Bro, you've got candida, you've got H. pylori, you've got low stomach acid, you've got all this stuff going on. You need to do a gut protocol to fix it." And then, yeah, I did a gut protocol. It healed quite a bit of it, but it just gave me even more passion for it at that stage. And then
yeah.
that's where I wanted to start learning more about functional medicine. So I went down the Institute of Health for 18 months. I then found different mentors. It was at the time when I was still at uni. I was studying biomed, but it was just so out of alignment with what I wanted to do, like learning about pharmacology and medicating things, and so disease centric. Just had no interest in any of that. So that's when I stopped there, and then I went deep into the mentoring side of things, and then started working with clients from there. And then the journey's been full of just synchronicities ever since. There was a place called St. Haven, which opened up a few years ago, where their owner, their CEO, found me through like a reel on Instagram through Terra Madre that was reshared, just like crazy synchronicity moment. And he just messaged me and said, mate, we're going to open the world's best health club that's going to have an organic cafe, hyperbaric oxygen, cryotherapy, IV drips, massage, energy healing, gym, etc. And we want you to be our first health coach. So I went into that. In that process, I started earlier and I got into the sales side of things. And that was like a bit of a Wolf of Wall Street experience because the company that ran St. Haven was $1 billion company that were doing high-end luxury property. So I was in the sales business. I had to learn how to sell memberships into it as well, and made some crazy commissions over like a 3 or 4 month period at a time where I'm like, fuck, I don't know what I'm going to do for work at the moment because I haven't got a stable source of income. I wasn't ready to go all in with my business because of COVID and all of that. But
Mm.
again, like the universe just looked after me that way. So yeah, I was in that for a couple of years. Then my health got worse from being inside all the time,
Oh,
being around
true.
artificial light, being around EMF. And that was the time when I was learning deep about Jack Kruse's work. And yeah, again, it was just out of alignment. So I'm like, nah, we need to get back into nature. And we traveled Europe for 3 or 4 months, and then finished in Asia and started building the solar callus and felt so good doing that. And yeah, from there we moved down to Torquay, and the last couple of years we've been here living as close to nature as possible. And then yeah, it's also coincided with me expanding more in terms of starting to mentor other health coaches, and building my community, and yeah, building retreats and going from there. So that's the too long didn't read version of it.
That's awesome. Like most, some of that was on your Insta, and yeah, it's just when you sort of start the path, it's unreal what lights up for you, and yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of that because when you do something like that, the universe will just bring you someone or something, or that. Yeah, it's pretty cool how those synchronicities work once you're sort of in alignment with what you're doing and what you're meant to be doing. Sort of know what I mean? It's yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
and
cool.
that's another thing as well. Like I was scared shitless of going all into it because I was in the footy environment with the boys, going out, all thinking that I was a freak.
Yeah, been
And
there.
luckily, the timing of COVID allowed me to separate myself from that. I was with my beautiful fiancee Tyra every day, and yeah, it just got me to get more confident within myself and begin to understand that no, this is actually what I want to do. So that period of time of not going out every single weekend because we literally couldn't because of the
Mm,
lockdown worked out well for me to be able to step into it. And now like I still love all those boys, but I barely see them. And if I had have known that at that time, I would have been like, fuck, I'm going to be a loner. I'm going to be all by myself. But being on this journey, there's just been so many incredible people that I've met along the way that have just come out of nowhere. And because it's in such alignment with values and the way of living and just even just looking after yourself and wanting to grow,
yeah,
like some of these people you meet them and it's like you know them for a week, but it feels like you've
yeah,
known them for this life and all the past lives before that as well. So yeah, it's beautiful, and that can be and that's what I tell a lot of people. Like initially that's the scariest thing is realizing you're going to probably lose a lot of the people around you, which is the familiar. But from that, you're going to create all this space energetically to attract real people that are in alignment with your beliefs. And yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. Couldn't agree more with everything you just said there. Honestly, couldn't agree more. I just some circling back to some things you mentioned in there. I have written some things down. So like with the anxiety stuff, like that's really big amongst young people of today. I feel like mental health and anxiety is a real big one out there for someone out there that's probably been playing footy and doing the things we used to be doing, pretty much the same thing. Like, how did you overcome like how did you overcome your anxiety basically? What was like was there a few things you did? Like what did you do? Let my listeners into that space because I feel like
Yeah,
that's a big thing at the moment.
of course. So,
Mm.
yeah, I'd say there's definitely been layers to it. I'd say I'm still dealing with some version of anxiety, which is a good thing. And that's the first thing is like the understanding of it as a whole is that it's so
Mm.
fear-based, but it's there for a reason. And there's a very good evolutionary reason to be anxious because if our ancestors weren't and they were just fucking free-nilly going around doing whatever they want, eating whatever they want, jumping into water, whatever it was, then they wouldn't have survived because they would have been living a too high a risk life. So naturally, we're all going to have a little bit of an inclination to have anxiety because it's an evolutionary advantage to allow you to survive. But I think the first off, the biggest thing is like just how I wouldn't even say surface level. It's so gimmicky the way we talk about it in Australia with like mental
100%.
health, saying,
Yep.
"Are you okay?" And I worked at a mental health foundation for about 12 months during my psych after with my placement and that. And yeah, it's just that whole "Are you okay?" day and just the way we talk about it is just to literally brag about the fact that we're doing something, but
100%.
it's not actually addressing anything. It's not doing anything. It's not helping
100%.
people feel understood. And there's layers to it. So the way I like to explain it is like there's physical anxiety, which is based in the body, and then there's psychological anxiety as well, which is based in the mind. And they both feed into each other because of the brain's connection directly to the body. So if I'm thinking about things that are making me anxious, it's going to create a state of anxiety in my physical body. And if my physical body's in that state of anxiety, it's going to make my thoughts become anxious as well. So that's
Mm,
really important to understand. And I'd say for me, a lot of it was fear-based, which came down to like my childhood and what I grew up experiencing. Like when my parents divorced and my dad moved out, that created a lot of fear for me. I was the man of the house. I had two younger sisters. I had my mum as well. And it was like a very emotionally traumatic time. So I had a lot of fear from that period. And this is where, if you go deeper into like the Eastern philosophies and the energetics, we have the chakras, and the fear emotion is tied to the root chakra. And the root chakra's foundations, in terms of the way that it's going to be wired for your life, is from the years of 0 to 7,
yep.
which I was about 5 years old when all this kicked off. So it was very pivotal at that time. And as I said, there was a lot of ancestral and genetic fear, I think, that's been passed down the lineages as well. So a lot of the stuff that you're dealing with isn't even yours
That's true.
necessarily.
Yep.
So that's one aspect of it. But then, yeah, as you go on, that belief system is going to sort of shape your perception of the world. So when you're growing up and you're feeling into a lot of fear, you're always going to be thinking, okay, worst case scenario. And that can be from your attachment style with your parents. So there's like anxious, avoidant, anxious attachment styles, which can create that. Ideally, we want to grow up with a secure attachment style because that's going to allow us to feel safe and feel secure within the external environments that are around us. So there's no doubt your environment, based on what you grew up being exposed to, shapes your association with it. But then there's this biochemical layer that comes into it, which for me, the gut health side of things, I took probably would have taken 15 to 20 rounds of antibiotics throughout my life, which would have depleted a lot of my beneficial microbes. The
Mm.
Accutane side of things, that depleted a lot of them as well. So all of a sudden, all these microbes in the gut, which have really strong impacts to our neurotransmitters, aren't working the way that they're designed to. So, for example, our GABA neurotransmitter is what allows us to feel calm and feel regulated. That's very dependent on the state of our microbiome. So, if we have a poor microbiome, we don't have the ability to have sufficient GABA levels. And when GABA levels aren't high enough, glutamate rises, which creates more of this excited state in the nervous system and makes you more prone to anxiety. So, then there's the chemical aspects of it as well. There's also the environmental with like the lighting side of things. So blue light exposure, that increases cortisol, it increases reactive oxygen species as well, which creates more of this excited state within the nervous system. And then there's the nutritional side of things too. So for eating a nutrient depleted diet, and again, this is where you can have these awareness, you can have this awareness, and it's like, fuck, why do my parents know this? It's just the way that the system's designed.
Yeah.
So the standard Aussie diet is very nutrient depleted,
Yep.
which doubles down on that further. So then our methylation cycles can't work as well. We become deficient in vitamin B9, which has a huge role in this as well. So all of a sudden, the whole neurochemistry is just off. So even sometimes now, like if I'm working with a client and they're doing breath work or they're doing meditation or they're grounding or they're being out in the sun, they still can't really regulate their nervous system because they don't have the raw materials that their nervous system needs to create balance again.
Yeah.
So signaling is really important, and then raw materials are really important as well. So for myself, I'd say that the biggest tools that helped me with that were like definitely breath work, and that's where I start with all of my clients because our breath is our anchor for our nervous system. So depending on your breathing mechanics, and again, fear creates this inverted breathing mechanism where we become shallow breathers, where we're breathing up into our chest. And
Mm-hmm.
then that, as a result, creates more tension in the fascia. So our shoulders become tighter, our posture begins to round as well. And then we literally compress blood flow to the lungs. And then that becomes a self-enforcing loop. The other thing as well is a lot of people are mouth breathers.
Yep.
at nighttime, and then that stops the optimal levels of oxygen. It impacts our vagus nerve, it impacts the state that our nervous system's in and balancing that parasympathetic and sympathetic branch. And then the other thing is we're inverted breathers. So we breathe in and then we squeeze our gut in, and then we breathe out and we squeeze our gut out when it should be the reverse. We should breathe in and we should have this expansion of our diaphragm and our core. So a lot of people have that to begin with. And then when stress begins, then that reinforces that pattern. So if you're already a poor breather, then that will double down on itself. So breath work is incredible because it gives you the tools to actually take ownership of your physiology. Because when we breathe into the diaphragm and when we extend our exhale, it creates more parasympathetic activation. So simply by just me focusing on slowing down my breathing and exhaling a bit longer than my inhalation, that's already going to lower my heart rate. It's going to promote more parasympathetic activity, and then that's going to mirror back into my thoughts. Because the worst thing that you can do when someone's feeling anxious is to tell them to stop worrying about something,
Yeah.
because they're not actually like their psychology is being determined by their physiology. So that has to be the first intervention. So there's amazing apps out there. I've got two really good mates who are about to launch another one in Australia called Next Step. But there's some awesome ones that is free on YouTube. So understanding a few techniques like box breathing is great. My introduction to breath was actually through Wim Hof, and that's the opposite
Of
end of the
course.
spectrum. I watched a Yes Theory documentary that he was on, and yeah, I found that and then started doing that and just got addicted to doing that for like probably 6 months every night. But that's more of an up-regulating technique. The down-regulating techniques where you're doing the box breathing, where you're actually focusing on, yeah, slowing the exhale down, that's where you can have this effect. And simply by doing that, you're already going to be in a much calmer state, which is then going to allow you to do more work from the psychological aspect. So you need a gateway to get into it. Grounding works the same way. Getting out, being in the sun is amazing too. These are all ways of promoting better neurochemistry and lowering inflammation and regulating the nervous system. And then also having support around you, and not just the are you okay bullshit, but actually someone who you can really open up to. So for me,
Yes.
I had Tyra, my partner, for that, which was incredibly healing. And that's where relationships are just like the best way to understand the work that you're doing on yourself. Like you can journal and you can breath work and you can meditate, you can do
100%.
all of this work, but it doesn't actually become the work until it's used in the space of a relationship and it's mirrored
Yep.
back to you, because it's going to bring up your, yeah, your triggers and your conditioning. So yeah, a lot of that and having someone that you can share that with is so important. But then also, once you've understood that, you've got to go about rewriting the program and reparenting yourself. So for me, a lot of the really healing work came from doing inner child work. So
Yes.
inner child meditations, journaling as well, like writing a letter to your younger self and then
Mm.
flipping it. So being your younger self and speaking to you now in a meditation, or being your younger self and writing a letter to yourself now. That's a really powerful way to be able to start to integrate what happened, because usually it's the inner child that's the version of you that's coming out when the anxiety or the fear is there in the first place. So it's like the little boy Nathan who's like worried that something's going to go wrong, or worried that mum and dad's going to find out, or worried he's going to get in trouble, which is why all of a sudden you can feel so helpless in those situations when something actually triggers you. So that's a really important aspect of it. And it does take a little bit of guidance initially, but you can continue that yourself. And there's so many good podcasts and YouTube videos and resources out there to do all this. So yeah, they were some really powerful tools that I used, the inner child work, the breath work as well. There's thing I didn't do this at the start, but now what can be great is like using specific nootropics. So like L-theanine is really good, chamomile tea,
Mm.
magnesium glycinate. A lot of people are deficient in magnesium,
Yes, they are.
so that's really key. And this is where like even when we think about the homeopathy approach, again, like we've still like signaling has got to be dialed in from our environment. And then if there's blocks or dysfunction, that's where homeopathy can work. But then there's just the reality of, do we have the raw materials that we need, which is where eating really well comes into play, but also your gut health. And in some cases, we do need to use supplements. So like magnesium's one that I'd use with 90% of my clients. Specific forms will be absorbed better. So for like anxiety, for example, magnesium acetyl taurate or magnesium glycinate or magnesium L-theanate would be great. Like they're really great ones that can move more into the nervous system and have an effect, rather than just like building up levels or working through the muscle. But we also want to try and be more food grade with it. So like magnesium bitin's one that is derived from like salt,
Okay.
from salt lakes, which you can get, which is also a really good form. So yeah, there's got to be this holistic approach where we understand, okay, is there any deficiencies that we're dealing with? Because, for example, if magnesium's low, then it's going to be really hard to ever get on top of your anxiety. Like that's got to be something that's just got to be ticked off. So yeah, having that approach to the way that you're going about it is really important too.
Yeah. Just I've just made some notes of everything you've written there. Like I agree with you. Like magnesium deficiency, even just you drinking like we're both drinking water here. Like
Mm,
people are not only magnesium deficient, people are dehydrated. I've noticed
100%.
even in Queensland, people just don't drink water.
Yeah. And that's another huge driver. Like even just being 1% dehydrated is going to massively impact your nervous system and your calcium
100%.
fluctuations in your electrolyte levels too. So most people are dehydrated and they're drinking tap water.
Yep.
So that's a huge issue in itself. But the reality is we need roughly like the equation's roughly 0.33 times your kilos in body weight. So for example, if you're 90 kilos, you should be drinking about 3 liters of water a day, 60 kilos, about 2 liters of water a day. That's if we're drinking like high quality water. If we're drinking
Hmm.
tap water that's got trace amounts of pharmaceuticals in it, it's got fluoride in it, it's got chlorine, it's got heavy metals, it's got all this shit. It's not actually bioactive and it's not charged.
No.
And through evolution, we were always drinking spring water, which is highly charged and has this life force in it as well. So when we're drinking this dead water, it might come into our system, but it's not actually going into our cells and it's not hydrating the way that we're designed to. Another
Yep.
aspect of our hydration comes to the light environment that we're in. And again, blue light is dehydrating, non-native EMF is dehydrating. So if you're living in the city or an apartment building or you're inside a lot of the time, you're chronically going to be dehydrated. So your water intake increases even further. But when we're in sunlight, when we're in infrared light in particular, we actually create structured water within us, within our mitochondria, within cytochrome C oxidase. We actually create this structured water, which then hydrates our cells, hydrates our fascia and our tissues, and then allows us to actually be hydrated on that level. And then the water with the minerals and the electrolytes come in and it tops it off. So the more sunlight you get in a healthy balance, you actually need less water than if you're sitting inside all day around your computer with all this non-native EMF around you because it's increasing the demand of water. It's also increasing the demand of magnesium, which is
Mm.
another reason why, like, and I see it in clients in their blood work, the clients that live in the city or in apartment buildings, even when they're supplementing, they still can't get their blood work for their magnesium
Yeah.
levels up into optimal. But if someone's out in a property or they're out in nature a lot, it's a lot easier to sustain their magnesium levels because it's not getting as depleted from the non-native EMF around them.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Yeah. That's interesting, hey? And it's just and it's also so simple too. Like, I might be playing bit devil's advocate here, but like people will say, "Oh, if I spend too much time in the sun, I'm gonna get skin cancer and put sunscreen on and all this other bullshit too." Like, there's so much fear around being out in the sun, and I've seen your content. I say the same thing all the time too. It's like they're telling you one thing, we're telling you one thing. People are like, well, the doctor on the TV saying don't get in the sun. All these bullshit Daily Mail articles are saying it too. And then they're like, oh, but then Nathan Jordan on a podcast saying, no, 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 get out in the sun, get your balls out in the sun and get naked in the sun's good for us. It's like people like, not only are they in fear, they're also confused. But
Mm.
we both know, my audience should know, like the sun is really good for you. And
Yeah.
the ancients, I always say to people that question me, I say, well, our ancestors didn't have sunscreen like 200 years ago, and they were fine. They were out in the sun all day, every day, fucking in forts and shit. Like, you know, we've then gone so far the other way now. It's like the pendulum has swung too far towards, like, you could get conspiratorial, but like people are saying, you can say there's something out there, a force that's evil, that's trying to get us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to disconnect us from source and disconnect
Correct.
us from nature. But as you said then, if you think about it evolutionarily, and that's the thing that happens. Like you start learning about this stuff and you hear people talk about it, and then you learn the science of it, and then it integrates, but then it comes back to the simplicity. So because you actually understand the mechanisms and the science It gives you so much conviction when you talk about it because I don't need to fucking explain that anymore. It's just like common sense. And it's the energy behind speaking these truths. So,
Mm,
no shit, the sun is good for us. Like our ancestors, as you said, were in it all the time, but also our ancestors worshipped it. And we're the
correct.
first
Yes.
society that's actually feared it. And
Mm,
what's happened in that time, we've become less connected to nature. We've spent more time inside. We've pushed ourselves away from integrating sun and grounding and even just being out in the forest and being out in the ocean and having our microbiome nourished from nature. That's just happened less and less and less. And even with our food, we're eating more and more processed foods that are disconnected from their natural source. So that in itself is just a huge aspect of what we're dealing with. But then from there, the reality of it is the sun is designed in a way where, depending on where you are on the earth, you can thrive in it. Now, we all have different mitochondrial haplotypes, which come down to where we have our ancestors evolved from, and that's what our mitochondrial DNA is made up of. So, for example, some people are going to be a lot like it's going to be a lot easier for some people to be able to build up their melanin reserves compared to other people. So, for like you and I, Northern European ancestry, we don't need to be spending hours and hours and hours in the sun because we didn't evolve in this area. Like, if we did, we'd be looking like Aboriginals did.
mm,
But that's not to say that we just have to fear it all of a sudden and not go in at all. It's about understanding the laws of nature. So you look at animals, for example, they don't lay in the sun for 4 hours during the peak hottest part when it's at midday. They'll go out in the sun in the morning, they'll get a couple hours, then they'll go lay in the shade and they'll probably even nap and sleep during the day. And then they'll come out again in the afternoon and lay in the sun, which
mm.
is the way that we should be doing this as well. We go out into the sun in the morning, we get that morning sun activation, which increases the filigrin and the urocanic acid in our skin, which actually primes our skin to receive that sunlight. And that's a really important thing to understand is the morning sun becomes our sunscreen for that day. So there is this ability for the sun to harm our skin, but that's based on our skin's capacity to receive it.
Correct.
And our skin's capacity to receive it can be improved by getting morning sun because it cues the dominoes to fall to then produce the chemicals that we need to receive it effectively. So getting morning sun has to be a non-negotiable, and you'll see that, and all my clients see that. Like if you're someone who burns regularly, as soon as you start getting morning sun, you can go into the sun, have the same exposure, and you'll stop burning. Your body will begin to adapt and it will begin to prime itself more effectively. But then there's also the inflammation and the oxidative state and the seed oils and all the other
Yeah.
noise that we create, which then makes our skin cells more vulnerable. So if we have healthy skin cells based on low inflammation and optimal redox, we can generate and harness more of that power from the sun and bring it into our system safely. But if you just overload it, because you think about the amount of energy the sun provides, and the more UV light the sun has, the more energy is there. If you don't have a system that is strong enough to receive that energy, it's going to overload the system. And if that system is already in a state of oxidation and there's a lot of stress in there, it's going to create more reactive oxygen species. And then if you're not optimizing your sleep, and that's a huge part of the sun as well as mitigating your blue light exposure, because if you're getting a lot of blue light exposure, particularly at nighttime, it's going to impact your melatonin release. And melatonin is the chemical that we have in our body that is the most protective against cancer. It's a kamikaze molecule. So if that's not being released during the stages of sleep, then you're not actually going to go and take away those precancerous cells or those cancerous cells, which is a natural process that we should all have. We're all like you and I have cancerous cells within us right now, but our immune system and our melatonin and our natural killer cells are working away at evaporating them and mitigating them, which is the way that we're designed to operate. So yeah, there's so much more. There's like the sunglasses side of things, there's the sunscreen side of things, there's understanding, okay, what is a solar callus in the first place? So again, really common sense way of thinking about it is you're not going to go to the gym for your first session and try and squat 200 kilos. You're going to
Hmm.
go there and you're going to squat the bar, and then you're going to go there the next week and maybe add 2.5 kilos and then continue to slowly progress your exposure. And that's what you should be doing with the sun. But you don't even need to be doing that with the sun because we have the reality of the 365 day or 366 day year, and that allows for this gradual rise and this gradual fall of UV light exposure. So, for example, now it's like UV 1 or 2 at the moment where I am. So as it gets further and further into the year, that's going to go up to 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6. So my body is going to be able to adapt to that, be able to slowly increase the melanin over that time. So by the time it gets to summer, my system is designed and has evolved itself through the course of the year to be able to handle that light. But if I've just stayed inside all the time, which is a huge issue in winter, is people just don't go outside at all.
Hmm.
So they lose that melanin capacity, they lose that solar callus, and then they go out for their 2 weeks of holiday throughout the year and get the shit burnt out of them. It's like again, it's just common sense. Why would you expect anything different from your
Mm.
body? If you're not stretching and foam rolling and exercising regularly, and then you go and try and run a 100-meter sprint for some fun at the end of the year and you tear your hamstring, well, why are you getting pissed off at yourself when you haven't actually looked after your body? It's just this disconnect and just almost this arrogance thinking that things are just going to work out because I want them to, when throughout the year and just in general, we don't have these really basic habits to nourish our physical body and then also nourish our mental body.
Yeah. Common sense is a big one. We seem to have lost we seem to have lost that in a lot of areas of not only health but life as well. Because there's so much programming around all the things that you've just spoken about. Like there's so much fear and
Mm.
panic and terror, and people are buying into that energy. So for us to come in and give them another version of or another basic truth, it's like no, 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 I don't want to go there, and we've lost that ability to even nourish our bodies as well because all we're seeing through sport on the ads on the TVs, the Maccas, the KFC, all this shit food. We're seeing the alcohol, the gambling, all these things. They sponsor all the major sporting whatever else people are watching, they're all sponsored by the same thing. So
Yeah.
the advertising, the drinking culture, we could talk for hours. You go into the climate. I read your article on Substack about 6G. It's like there's so much stuff
Yeah.
that is like information overload in fear, but then information overload in truth. And if you're listening and watching this now, some people are like, "Fuck, like where can someone start?"
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the way I like to teach is just comes down to the laws of nature. Like how
Yeah.
can you create a life closer to the laws of nature? Because that's when you're going to be your healthiest. Now, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you just throw everything out because as I said at the start, like the man-made issues require man-made solutions in a lot of cases. And the reality is like the odds are stacked against us. It's very hard to be healthy in today's world, and it's designed for that way to be able to control people. But there's things that you can understand underneath that, like the light side of things and what that does to dopamine and the role that dopamine has in allowing us to have the motivation to do things
Yeah, well
or
said.
or the need to be stuck on the merry-go-round of scrolling and porn and gambling and
Yeah, porn's a
often
big one.
watching TV. Like all of this lowers our
Porn's a big
life.
one, Geordie. Sorry to cut you off, but porn's a
Yeah,
huge
go
one.
for it.
Porn's a huge one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
another one.
huge.
Yeah.
And that just from a young age, that just wires you to be stuck in that relationship with your sexual power and your life force.
Yeah, well
And
said.
that's just constantly another way of depleting us and our vitality. So yeah, that's huge. And a lot of it creates a lot of dysfunction in relationships as well, and your confidence within yourself. And there's this shame cycle, and the shame cycle is the thing that fucks everyone the most
Well
because
said.
shame is the lowest energetic frequency that there is. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Have you read the book Letting Go by David Hawkins?
Yeah, I've heard. It's on
Yeah.
a.
It's
I've heard the
also on
audio
an
book. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So have you seen his chart from that?
Nah, because I only had the audio. No, I haven't seen the
Okay, you,
chart.
you
Yeah.
probably would have seen it like on socials or something, but
Mm.
it's the scale of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the very top is like love and peace and enlightenment and joy, etc.
I have seen
At
that. Yeah.
yeah, at the very bottom, so even below fear is the emotional frequency of shame. And all those things that you spoke about that become destructive in our lives or are addictive forces like porn, like gambling, like drinking, like, yeah, doing drugs, all of these things. What happens when the dopamine high that you get off it finishes? You fall into this cycle of shame that's there,
Yeah.
which creates
Even casual sex, Jordan. And
yeah, exactly. All of it's just creating this state of shame, which then lowers your vibrational frequency. It starts making you attract more of these negative things into your life
well
and then
said.
keeps you stuck in it and keeps you suppressed in it as well. So if you can understand, okay, what are those triggers that create that cycle of shame and start to remove them? And again, you don't have to just rip the band-aid off, but start to make things, and that's why I love like Atomic Habits is just a really good practical way of going, okay, I'm not going to be perfect. And that's another thing is
Yeah.
understanding your vices and your shadow, which is there to be a mirror and something that you need to integrate into your life rather than running away from it. All of a sudden, can I just, even if I don't quit the behavior, can I change my relationship to the behavior? So I might know that I'm watching porn every single night or I'm drinking every single night, but rather than doing it unconsciously, can I begin to do it consciously? And then can I actually own the choices that I'm making? So rather than just being someone who's on autopilot all the time, start to take ownership of what you do. And that's what I say to all my clients when we're trying to break these habits that are there, because then you can say, okay, I'm owning this right now. What is this actually fulfilling in this moment? Am I tired? Do I have low energy? Am I bored? Is there something that I'm trying to avoid? What's the core value or the core need that's coming through that's making me reach out and do this behavior? And again, it's going to be very hard to do that in the moment. But even by waiting until you feel really good to have this motivation to journal or to meditate and to set an intention, already that's going to start working your subconscious. And then slowly over time, you can begin to say, all right, there's a pattern here. Every single time I go to work or every single time I hang out with these people, I get home and I feel shit about myself and it makes me want to watch porn or it makes me want to have a drink or it makes me want to have a punt. And then you can start to say, all right, so rather than focusing on that behavior or that mechanism, I need to stop hanging out with these people, or I need to quit my job, or I need to do something else so that I don't get myself into that state to need that in the first place. So
Mm.
that's a really important aspect of just the energetics and what you're attracting in your life is realizing that like we have a choice in every single thing that we do. And that's where beginning to change the way that you speak to yourself, going from I have to do this to I choose to do this or I get to do this, it just empowers you more and more and more. But when you don't have that capacity, you do become a victim to life and it just feels like everything's working against you.
Yep.
And then that becomes overwhelming and you're like, fuck, well, I just give up. So it puts you back into that lower vibrational frequency, which is what the system wants us to be doing. It wants us to be in this state where we feel so overwhelmed that we can't do things. So we don't actually make any changes and we stay stuck at where we are. So understanding that you do have control in every single situation that you're in. You may not be able to control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it when you do the work on yourself. That gives you so much capacity to be able to change things and then create the life that you want from there.
100%. And it's all about just picking one thing and starting. I know for me on my journey, mate, I had a whole list of shit I was doing very similar to you. I can throw porn and casual sex in there as well. I just went, right, the drinking leads to casual sex, the drinking leads to XYZ in my life. I'm just gonna go and just cut that straight away. And as I told you at the start, like I looked myself in the mirror and said, no more. That's it. Had one last night, 2021 grand final was the night grand final, Melbourne Bulldogs. Fell through a table talking to three young girls. Embarrassed myself. Went right. That's it. No more. Woke up the next
Yeah.
day. Within 6 months, had this podcast formed, a book written. All these things started coming out, being like, okay, well, I'll stop drinking. Like, just it's like if that person's listening right now, it's like just write a list of all the stuff and just pick one. Because
Yeah.
once you have one, you go, right, I've got evidence here now. I go, right, I've done that and I've proven myself that I can do that. What's the next one? Like from there, I went started going to the gym again and started getting fit and healthy and getting a bit stronger. Going right, well now I have a body of work physically. I can now go. Well, I've done the work here. Where else does my life need work? And you just slowly start. As you said, progression, not perfection. Just pick one thing. Just start with like one. Because I know for me, as I said, drinking led to the porn, the casual sex, and the dots were connected from that. So, you know, it's just a matter of just starting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's building momentum. And again, you can look at it from that aspect and you can flip it as well and say, well, if I do things that are going to allow me to feel good from this more wholesome perspective, if I go out in the sun, if I have a good morning routine, if I do a bit of breath work, if I start cleaning up the food that I'm eating, if I
Yeah, well
start to
said.
focus on my blood work and optimize some deficiencies that I have there, all of a sudden you're not going to feel the need to do those things and you're going to create separation and have just more awareness of how you feel in general. and go, fuck, I don't want to wake up with a hangover tomorrow because I feel really good today. And then but the biggest thing is really just having that confidence within yourself that like things are going to be okay and that you are able to do the work because drinking is like it's so conditioned into society
But
and there's
especially in Australia, bro. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy here just how conditioned it is into society and then how comfortable it makes people feel
But
to
also,
express
Geordie, sorry to
themselves.
cut you off again, but people in Australia only 5 years ago only took a needle so they could get back to the pub. That was their
Mm.
only reason to take the needle.
Mm.
Like,
And it's just this really weird energy that Australia has around tall poppy syndrome and around conforming and fitting in and
well said.
yeah, the society expectations that are there. And if you're not drinking, well, you're the odd one out, and you're gonna get picked on, and you're gonna get scrutinized. So if you're not drinking, it's almost a form of tall poppy syndrome in the group. And you just see it. And then what happens is the people that really drink, they're the ones that are then even more conformed into the society beliefs. So what the government's doing or what the masses are doing. So you think about COVID, it's
Yeah.
those ones that just went along with it because they already go along with their life and they're living their life on autopilot. So whatever the norm is wanting, that's what they're going to be really strong about in believing. So yeah, understanding that is key. And then initially, it is just going to be about deconditioning yourself. Like you need to have separation from these things to reduce your reliance on them, or reduce your tolerance on them as well. And finding like that's why having a relationship is so powerful because it allows you to have someone that can help hold you accountable and support you through this as well. Eventually, you'll get yourself strong enough that you can hold yourself accountable, but initially, when you're really lost in it, you do need to be able to have some support. So you find a coach, you find a practitioner, or you go and you speak to I mean, I don't think psychologists are great, but even that can be a starting point initially to get yourself out of your head to start
Mm,
to own the decisions that you're making in
mm.
your life. And I think just for men, it's so important because like we don't have this emotional capacity the same way that women do. We don't
That's true.
feel as like we're not as naturally inclined to speak about our emotions. So these things build up in the background and then they lead to these really destructive behaviors or it leads to rock bottom, which is where most people's like ability to change comes from is they need to hit rock bottom and be like, oh fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can intervene before it gets to rock bottom. And that comes down to, yeah, trusting yourself and also just trusting and being vulnerable.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. Men's mental health, mate. You know, we don't, not mental health, men's in general, we've been conditioned for such a long time. And I talk about it a lot where crying's weak, asking for help's weak. Like it's been this conditioning from generations gone by where we're supposed to be tough, we're supposed to be strong, but like in actual fact, crying and sharing our emotions and telling people they're actually feeling sad today is a sign of strength, is a sign of courage. It's just been twisted a lot in the last probably 100 years, I feel, that we have this society. I know my dad's age, I talk about it a lot too, and my dad's like, it's true though, like that age group are just emotionally not present and emotionally not aware. And they just bottle everything up, and then they get to a point where they just let it out and they just snap. And it's like that like it's just this like mental program of like anything to do with emotions is just like it's just a sign of weakness.
Yeah. And as you said, you think about the and our ancestors and the generations that came before us, how many like you speak to people, I speak to all my clients and get their history and their family and their grandparents and that. How many of the men were like alcoholics at one point?
Yeah.
Whether it was your grandpa or your great grandfather, at some stage along the line that happened, and
Mm-hmm.
then the generation below that never got taught how to feel into their emotions and have a secure attachment style with their dad. They would have had a fearful one or an avoidant one or an anxious one. And then if that doesn't get processed, then that gets pushed down to the next generation and the cycle
Yep.
continues. So the beautiful thing is like we have the ability to help our previous ancestors and generations that came and the future ones by stepping into that and saying, "No, fuck this. I'm not letting my son then have this and go through it, and then his son, etc., and
Yep.
intervene with it." So yeah, understanding that aspect of it is huge. And again, it gives you some more context as to the way that you're wired. So you stop blaming yourself. And it's not about blaming like your dad or your grandpa or whoever came before them. It's just about understanding like this may not actually be mine that I'm dealing with. This just may be an unconscious pattern that's been passed down. And now I'm stuck with it being like, where the fuck's this coming from? Trying to make sense of it, leading to these like destructive habits or these addictions that are there.
Yeah. And it's having the awareness and I talk about it too, patience, resilience, and discipline to just to look in the mirror and say, hey, this stops with me. And the most powerful thing I did on my journey was just look myself in the mirror and just say, look, this all stops with me. And that my future generation won't have to carry these things around that I've had to carry around. Like it's literally going to be, hopefully, my goal, like clean slate. There'll still be
Yeah.
some things that they'll have, but like the big things that I've had to carry, like I've carried that for you, and I've done the work to let that go, so that you can have a much better go at it than I did from an early age, if that makes sense. That's sort of my motivating factor. Is
Yeah.
like I'm doing this for you, for
Yeah.
me
And
and for you, but mainly for you, so you can have a clean slate.
yeah, and it also then connects to the health side of things and what we
one Hundred
inherit.
percent.
So the health of our parents, as that continues to go down the lineage, we're going to keep getting more and more depleted based on the lives that they lived. And you see that with testosterone levels, you see that with gut
Yeah.
health and the microbiome and what that's doing to our mental health and our mood. It's huge. So
Mm.
as that's continued to get worse and worse and worse over time, our capacity and our starting point is so much lower than what it was for the generations before us.
Yep. 100%. Just to switch gears a bit, what are some? Because a lot of coaches will say, like I'm big on the magnesium too, but what are some supplements that people can take that can help them with magnesium? Obviously, you've already mentioned them, like proteins and like we can talk for hours about the whey protein. Like, are there any good proteins out there people can take? Because a lot of men will listen to this and go, "Well, I go to the gym. I've listened to Nate's podcast. There's a bit of Jordan talking about like there's so many proteins out there that are shit for you, full of caffeine and pre-workout and that sort of shit." So, are there any supplements that you take or that you can recommend for anyone out there that can get them started on a more healthier path in terms of
Yeah.
supplementing, or is even supplementing a thing you recommend right at the start? Like, where do you sit?
Yeah, so initially, that's why I love blood work. It gives you a really good understanding of what you're dealing with. So, for example, magnesium we spoke about, but usually some other deficiencies, zinc or copper,
Yeah.
usually one of those two is deficient, and those two are really important because they need to be in the right ratio and balance with one another. If we look at like iron, for some people, that's super low. Not so much for men, more for female clients, but it can still happen if you're vegan, if you're vegetarian, if you're a former vegan, former vegetarian, and you've had your awakening, then that can be a big one. The electrolytes as well, vitamin D, like looking into the nutrients and getting a really good understanding of those first is really important before you go about supplementing. Because as I said, if you've got a copper and a zinc imbalance, and then you're just going really heavy with zinc, you're going to create more issues and you're going to be
Yeah,
solving
that's true.
by
Yeah.
supplementing with it. So we do want to test and have an understanding of where it's at. That is the good thing about being in Australia with our healthcare. We can go and we can get, I mean, it's getting harder and harder now. Um, and there's so many just shitty doctors that are gaslighting and yeah,
Yep.
that's a whole nother issue. But you can go and you can say, hey, I'm not feeling great, my gut health's off, I'm having issues. Or another good one is just saying, look, we're trying to conceive. I really want to get myself as healthy as possible, and then get some blood work done, and then have a look at that with someone who understands it for what it is, understands the functional ranges. So the difference between what the doctor's going to tell you is normal is huge compared to what a functional health practitioner or a health coach is going to tell you is optimal. So you want to try and aim for things to be optimal rather than just be normal. So that's a really good way. You then want to look at it from a food perspective as well. So I always want to maximize nutrient bioavailability through food because
Yep.
it's packaged in a way where we don't have these isolated nutrients. It comes in the way nature designed. So using something like, I mean, you can start off, most people have used MyFitnessPal to track their calories. I like using Chronometer. It's much more in depth from a micronutrient perspective. And that gives you, again, just a good baseline. So just track your food for 4 or 5 days, have a look at those micronutrients, what's deficient, what's sticking out, and then begin. And it's so easy now with there's so much shit that's going to come from having AI, but we can also use it to our advantage where you can put your food log into it and say, okay, what nutrients am I depleted in, and
Yeah, that's true.
what foods can I focus on including? So it is going to make a lot of even the health coaching side of things redundant in a lot of ways, but it is going to differentiate between the good coaches and the coaches that just have like a good system in place, for example. So you can do a lot of this yourself now, but it is always good to get someone who's an expert to give you a bit more direction and an overview. So then when you've got your bloods and you've got an understanding of your nutrients based on your food, then you can be more targeted with the types of supplements that you want to use. So a couple of really good ones that I like, taurine's a great one. It's really good in terms of gut health. And the way that I like to use supplements is from a multifactorial perspective. So taurine's working on gut health around bile conjugation, around fat absorption, but it's also great for the cardiovascular system and it's great for the nervous system as well. Improves GABA, improves the way magnesium works in the body. So, and it's a very cheap option and it's patented. So it's very consistent in terms of the quality that you can get. It's about $15. Another one, particularly for men that have had a big period of time on the piss and drinking a lot, is vitamin B1, thiamine.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are really deficient in that. And even when you're eating clean and eating like organic, for example, whole foods, if you do track on Chronometer, you will see these consistent deficiencies that show up. B1 is a very common one. A lot of people are deficient in that. They're not getting enough from their food. And then if they've had a period of time of eating really high carbs or drinking a lot of piss, that depletes B1 even further. So that's a great one that you can move into. There's an awesome guy named Elliot Overton who's done a heap of research into this. He's got heaps of great podcasts going deeper into it. But you can just start off with like a vitamin B1 HCl form, which is about $15 again. From there, like I'll use cod liver oil
Yeah.
consistently with clients. That's great. Vitamin A, vitamin D, omega 3s, DHA in particular. And seafoods are such a key thing that people aren't getting enough of, especially from like Northern European ancestry, Mediterranean ancestry. You have a higher requirement for it. And it has such an important role for our nervous system, for our inflammation control, for our ability to actually capture the sun, as we were talking about before, and build a solar callus. So seafood's so great in terms of the amount of nutrients that it can cover. Organ meats, same thing. Most people aren't going to want to eat liver or heart or spleen or thymus by themselves. So that's where I'll use like a desiccated organ supplement. Usually, like there's a good company called NextGen. There's another one called Primal Nutrition, and they've got like a men's formulated one where it's got bovine like testicle and spleen and heart and thymus, which is going to give you a lot of those micronutrients. And again, the closer we can keep it to food form, the better. And then from there, I'd say like most people are deficient in B9 and B12. So using like a B complex can be something, but you want to have a methylated form. So the difference between the supplements that you get from a good quality company like Symbiotica or Bioptimizers or Level Up compared to the shit that you get from the Chemist Warehouse is night and day. So
Yeah.
99% of the stuff from Chemist Warehouse is actually going to be creating more load on your system and it's going to be more harm than good in terms of what it's doing. So if you just think about like sourcing, for example, and again, you can put this into Claude or chat now and get it to do an analysis of different supplements so you can have a better idea rather than just going for the cheapest. But you want to stay away from fillers. You want to go for more bioavailable forms. If something's in a pill, it's going to have a lot more shit in it compared to something that's in a capsule as
Yep.
well. So there's just little things like that to be aware of when you are choosing because you want to go for quality. And then like there's hundreds of other ones that I would use, but I'd say they would be
Yep.
more of the foundational ones. But when it comes to things like gut issues, we might use something uh, like glutamine, for example, which is great. We'd use like colostrum, which is good again, and that's something that's food grade, food form, fermented foods, depending on the microbiome and depending on what you're dealing with. And then there's more context dependent things. So, for example, if you have blood sugar issues, berberine can be great. If you have high cholesterol and cardiovascular issues, allicin can be great. Nattokinase can be great as well. If you've taken the jab, nattokinase, serrapeptidase, bromelain, NAC. What else? Skull cap, cordyceps, all of these things, and cordyceps in particular, mushrooms in particular, are fantastic from a nootropic perspective. So, for example, before this, I had some lion's mane and I had some cordyceps in my tea, which are great because they help promote brain-derived nootropic factor, increases dopamine, increases VO2 availability. So you start to learn and have these little tools in your toolbox for when you need them.
Mm.
But I'd also say like removing a lot of the stuff is key as well. So for most people, they have a terrible relationship with coffee where they're so dependent on it.
Yeah, that's a big one.
They need 3 or 4 shots a day to get
Yeah.
through the day. It then rolls over, and it's one of those things where yeah, you're gonna feel shit for maybe half a week when you come off it and you give yourself a reset. But it is so powerful to then allow yourself to have a better tolerance to it moving forward. So you're not needing 4 cups to feel anything. And more importantly, you're not just having a coffee for the sake of having a coffee. You want to use it on a day where maybe you haven't had the best sleep, or you do have a big day of meetings, or you want to just feel a little bit more energized and a little bit more alert. But I mean, the best examples like fucking people that are at the airport, they're about to jump on a plane, that are having a coffee before they jump on it. Like that's not the situation where you want to be putting your nervous system into more of that excited state. So
Yeah.
having awareness of your coffee consumption is so key because it'll improve your sleep, it'll improve your energy throughout the day. It'll help your adrenal glands too, which a lot of people have issues with. And then, yeah, as I said, from there, it really depends on what we're dealing with. So if it's gut related, we use different compounds there. If it's cardiovascular related, same thing. If we want to
Mm.
help for metabolic health, if we want to help for the nervous system, yeah, that's where you go into the specific context that you're dealing with for other
Yeah.
supplements. Yeah.
Lots of awesome info there. So I hope people have written that stuff down. I've written a few things down, so people might have to slow that one down, mate, so they can just write all that down. I'm gonna put some of these in the show notes as well, along with your socials and different things too. So it's just in there. But you mentioned the jab. Let's circle back there. Do you have a jab detox protocol for people who have taken that thing?
Yeah, I do. I have one in my school community. I've got a couple.
Righto, we'll
Um,
put a link to your school community in the show notes. Do you have a
yeah.
couple of protocols you can just
Yeah, so
yeah.
those things that I mentioned before, again, it's so unknown like what the fuck it's actually done, what was in it, is there
I think we're
nanotech in
still
it?
learning
Is
that
there
now, aren't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Today they're doing that. I've seen a lot of the theories today about that 2 o'clock
Yeah.
alarm that's going to go off. It's going to activate the nanotech and everyone. Look, I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
Um, I think it's very easy to get sucked into the
But I
fear-based
do
side
think
of
they're
things.
planning something. I think they're
Mm.
planning another false flag or something. I think there's something
Yeah,
going on there.
I think there's also definitely interactions, particularly with the mRNA vaccines and the 5G and the EMF that are around us as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, and that is having some sort of effect. Again, we can't test and measure this necessarily. We can only look at it from more of a mechanistic perspective.
Mm.
So the way that I like to think about it is first of all, like
Yep.
the vaccine was gonna double down on any weak spots that you have in your physiology. So if you have
Which
gut
would
health
be the
issues.
which would be the cancers and the heart attacks
Mm.
and all those things that have just fucking amplified in the last 5 years.
Yeah, so
Yep.
the heart attacks are a great one. So one of the biggest driver of heart attacks is what we said before is dehydration. Like if you're
100%.
dehydrated, you don't have electrolytes, your blood isn't going to flow effectively. And the whole conception around blood flow is key too, because even if you're exercising regularly, you need something called a zeta potential in your blood, which
Yep.
allows red blood cells and the lining of the blood vessels to repel each other, bounce off each other. The way that we build that up is actually being connected to the earth, grounding, and then also being in sun. That creates this effect that allows blood to flow more effectively. And it's when stagnation occurs that issues begin to arise. So the electrical potential of your body will determine how well your blood is flowing and how hard your cardiovascular system has to work. So you need to be drinking water, you need to be getting your feet connected to the earth, you need to be getting in the sun regularly. Again, all basics, all things
Yep.
that are built around being connected to nature. But yeah, if you then had an mRNA jab and there was already a low zeta potential that was there, or it happened to go directly into the cardiovascular system, then that's where we're seeing these increases in like clots and we're seeing myocarditis, this heart inflammation build up because the spike protein is proliferating in those areas specifically. So what we want to do is think, okay, how can we optimize the physiology in those areas. So the things that I mentioned before, nattokinase,
Yep.
serrapeptidase, lumbrikinase, they're all great at mitigating clotting in the body.
Ah.
Nattokinase, same thing. So
Yep.
it's these the theory is, and this is what's his name? He's on X. I'll have to find his name, but he's a really good follower. He's done a lot of research into a lot of this stuff. Kevin McKernan, that's his name, and
Yep.
also Dr. Peter McCullough.
Yes, he's good.
But their theory is around like this chronic microclotting that's occurring from the spike protein, from the mRNA that's in there that's creating these issues. So if we can mitigate the microclotting by improving blood flow, by using things like nattokinase, by getting into the sauna regularly, all these things are going to
Yes.
help. So anytime that you're flying, for example, the risk goes up massively. Anytime that you're spending a lot of time inside, if you're up higher from the earth where the magnetic flux isn't as strong, these things are going to reduce the zeta potential and impact your blood flow. The other thing is just the overall health of your fascia. So making sure that you're exercising, you're doing functional movements, you're foam rolling, you're doing myofascial release, you're breathing properly. All these things are going to help your fascia and then allow for optimal blood flow because the constriction of the fascia will then put more strain on the cardiovascular system. The thing that it's doing around these turbo cancers is its impact to the thymus gland in particular, where the spike protein is building up. And then as a result, the T regulator cells, which are part of our immune system, and there's differentiation between the immune system. So there's like Th1, Th2, Th17, for example. So depending on where this is occurring and the impact that it has to a branch of the immune system, it can turn off those detective molecules that allow us to kill off any precancerous cells. And then as a result, the spike protein can feed into this. And then we start to see these like rapid increases in tumors. And it is one of those things where like the more exposure you had, the more jabs you had, the faster this is going to occur. And the sicker you were to begin with, or the more disconnected or unplugged you were from the earth, the faster these things are going to increase as well. So yeah, all the basics are so key. Getting in the sun. I've had Jack Cruz on our podcast. We spoke about this. He reckons everyone should be moving up towards Darwin that's been jabbed to turn
Yep.
off the nuclear DNA and turn on the mitochondrial DNA.
Is that because of the climate, the
Yeah,
weather?
it's from the sun, the UV,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
magnetic
Yeah.
flux of the earth. All of those things are really going to be powerful. But again, you can do this and build a really healthy solar callus, build your melanin reserves, because melanin's also a chelator, so it can pull out some of these heavy metals and can detox us naturally from within, rather than having to do crazy supplements and
Yep.
purges like that. So yeah, building your solar callus, increasing your amount of UV exposure, and building up your vitamin D reserves, because vitamin D, the lower your vitamin D levels are, the higher likelihood you have of producing cancer in the first place.
Yep.
And then using like tools like fasting. Like fasting is great. It's going to boost
Yes.
autophagy. So again, it's got to fit into your lifestyle and your routine and your nervous system state. If you're someone who's highly stressed, if you're depleted nutrient wise, fasting is going to be an issue. It's going to create more stress on your system. You're not going to be able to handle it. But if you've got those foundations underway, then it can be a great tool. And you can do, like I like doing a 72-hour fast like 2 or 3 times a year. And only having water, having some enzymes on top of that, potentially. I'll do a couple of saunas as well to up that even further. But yeah, the sauna is a great tool. Cold thermogenesis is a great tool as well. Again, it's got to be dependent on if you're a female, the stage of your cycle,
Yep.
if you're a human in general, like your adrenal reserves, your cortisol levels. All this stuff needs to be context dependent. And then there's like these deeper practices that they're doing, like they're doing a trial in Japan at the moment where they're doing like a pretty much a blood cleansing routine as
Mm.
well
Righto.
that can help.
Mm.
There's like intravenous vitamin C that can be good. There's like hyperbaric oxygen therapy as well. But again, there's a lot of nuance with those types of practices. I just say unless you've got clotting issues, unless you're on anticoagulants, just taking nattokinase a few times a week is just a good idea as a baseline. And increasing the amount of vitamin K that you get, which a lot of people struggle. It's another one that's very commonly depleted in people's diets. So not really going to eat the food natto, which is Japanese. It doesn't taste great, but it's where the enzyme nattokinase is derived from. So you can have that directly. A lot of like aged cheeses as well are higher in the forms of vitamin K. So yeah, vitamin K is a really important nutrient along with its balance around calcium and vitamin D. So yeah, they'd be some things that I would suggest. The lymphatic work is also really key, which a lot of
Yeah,
people don't talk about. So having a regular lymphatic practice, check out Perry Nicholson, do the big six daily. And then you can use things like castor oil to promote blood flow, magnesium chloride as well. All these things are going to really keep those detox pathways working well. And then the last aspect of it is really the gut health, because if you're not going to the toilet regularly and consistently, and there's dysbiosis or there's LPS or parasites or pathogens, then that's also going to clog up that detox pathway. So you need to make sure that that's really working well so that you are able to continue to detox the way that we're designed to.
100%, mate. So much information in that last hour and a bit. Like, I have to get you back on so we can just, pick out a couple of things and go deep into them. Like you're giving the people a lot, saying I really thank you for your time and energy to this. Just lastly, where can
Yep.
people find you if someone's listening to this and go, oh yeah, this guy's really cool. Like I know I found you on Insta just through Mel. Like where else can people find you, mate? And how can someone just reach out to you and you know ask you some questions or work with you? So just give yourself a plug.
Yeah. So my Instagram is Jordan underscore Davey.
Yep,
I've got two podcasts. I've got the Real Health Talk that Zach and I have done for a few years, and then I've got my own one now, which is Organic Optimization. I've got my website, jordandavey.com, and then I've got my school community, which is called Organic Optimization, which has well, we're about 225 members now, and I put pretty much everything into that in terms of like protocols, breakdowns. There's a big community aspect of it as well. So we have weekly calls, we do breath work together, meditation,
love it.
we go deep into the conspiracies and all of that. Um, and yeah, it's pretty much my community to nourish and give all my knowledge and everything that I've got. So that's like a lower ticket option in terms of working with me. I still
Yep.
provide like guidance and that through that, but in terms of like working one-on-one with me, I also see clients. I do one-off consults, but then I do longer term coaching, like 6 and 12 months. And then if you're a coach or a practitioner, I do mentoring as well. So I've got a group of about a dozen mentees that are all in different areas of health. And yeah, it's about helping refine that practice even more and becoming even more holistic with it.
No, I love it. Love it, mate. We'll put all the links to all of that in the show notes. People can have a look through. Yeah, very, very grateful. I just happened to find you, mate. Really awesome conversation today. And if there's one thing someone can take away from this chat, mate, what would that message to someone be? Just to sum it all up.
I think for your listeners and for my listeners too, like less is more. Like you don't need to continue to take more and more information in. You just need to begin to integrate the things that you do know. And you've got to try and balance out this wanting to know what's going on in the world, what are the elites doing,
Yeah,
who's running this, but that consumes you and then that
it
can lower
does.
that vibration that's there too. So you need to
Yep.
have enough awareness to know, okay, this is what's going on, but you don't need to let that be your life where you're constantly feeding into it because that can, yeah, have a negative impact on you as well. So be really cautious with the information that you are taking in, and then make sure that you actually integrate integrate
Yeah.
integrate that information into your life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nah, good piece of advice because, if someone's just starting their awakening process, yeah, I can relate to letting that consume me. But it's just about focusing on you and focusing on the things that you can do that you can put into the field that can help others anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's definitely an addictive element to it
100%.
as well. And you go on X for bloody a minute and your cortisol and your heart rate's through the roof with some of the stuff that you see on there. So you do have to be very protective of your
Yep.
your energy and your attention and your awareness
Yeah.
as to where it's going. But yeah, as you said, it's about understanding what's in your control and then owning that.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you've shared today to my audience, mate, to my community, and yeah, really, really grateful for your time, your energy, and for your willingness to come on the platform, mate. So really, really appreciate you today and sharing all that you shared. And you're a wealth of knowledge for someone that's how old are you?
28.
28, yeah. So really awesome, man. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and yeah, just keep doing it. It's awesome. I'm enjoying some of your content and all those things. I gave you a follow last night and just made some notes, and pretty awesome story, mate. And just yeah, as I said, a wealth of knowledge for only 28 years old. So who knows what the future has for you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate
I'll have
it.
to
And
get you
thank you
back
for
on.
doing what you're doing.
Yeah, have to get you back on. We'll delve into some more of these, mate, because we've sort of just touched on a lot of stuff there. So
Yeah, for
I'll have to
sure.
circle back, mate. Really, really do appreciate it. So thank you for everyone that's listening and watching. This has been the Breaking Free podcast. Geordie will be back, I reckon, by the end of the year, hopefully. And yeah, I'll chat to you all soon. Cheers. Thanks, mate.